Everybody keeps saying the same thing. Joshua Tree is oversaturated, Airbnb is dead, and you missed the boat. And honestly, if you spend 5 minutes scrolling Facebook groups or reading YouTube comments, you'd think that no one is actually making money through short-term rentals anymore. But here's the real question. If the market is dead, then why are investors still buying? Why are permits still being talked about being pulled? And why are some properties still outperforming anyone else? The truth is, people look at this market completely wrong. I'm Jessica Thiel with Coldwell Banker Roadrunner, and today we're going to talk about what's actually really happening with Airbnbs and short-term rentals in Joshua Tree, Yucca Valley, and in the high desert in 2026. Because yes, the market has changed, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad market. Let's get into it. The biggest mistake I see people make is comparing today's market to the market in 2021. Back then, almost anything worked. You could buy a fairly average house, throw up some desert-themed artwork, list it on Airbnb, and the chances are you'd get bookings. Those days are gone, but that doesn't mean that the opportunity has disappeared. It just means the market has matured. And honestly, that's what's happening in every successful destination market. More competition shows up, guests become pickier, the properties that stand out win, and the ones that don't struggle. So before we talk about options, let's talk about numbers. Let's start with Joshua Tree. Depending on which data source you're looking at, there are roughly 1,100 to 1,600 active short-term rentals operating in the area. Occupancy generally falls somewhere in the upper 40% to low 50% range. Average nightly rates hover over $300 a night. Yucca Valley tells a similar story. Roughly 800 to 1,200 active rentals, occupancy in the mid 40s to low 50s, nightly rates often pushing into the mid 300 range. Now, when people hear the occupancy numbers around 50%, they oftentimes panic. But let's put that into perspective. That means a property is booked roughly half of the year while charging several $100s a night. That isn't a dead market, that's a competitive market. Big difference. The reality is there are still guests coming, there are still people booking desert vacations, and there are still people traveling to Joshua Tree National Park. The question isn't whether the demand exists. The question is whether your property gives people a reason to choose it. The biggest shift isn't occupancy, it's about guest expectations. 5 years ago, people rented location. Today, they rent experiences. The highest performing properties aren't necessarily the biggest homes, the most memorable homes. Properties with incredible outdoor spaces, hot tubs, cowboy pools, fire pits, outdoor dining areas, hammocks, stargazing decks, unique architecture, and Instagram-worthy design. The winners today understand they're competing for attention and not bookings. And that's where many investors get in trouble. They buy based on the numbers alone. Instead of asking, would I actually save this property if I saw it online? Because that's how guests shop today. Now let's talk about permits, because this is where most buyers get surprised. A lot of YouTube visitors either ignore regulations entirely or make it sound like short-term rentals have been banned. Neither is true, but the rules absolutely matter. In Yucca Valley, permits are capped. The town limits STR permits to approximately 10% of the housing stock. Permits are tied to ownership and have renewal requirements. There are occupancy limits, noise monitoring requirements, and complaint response requirements. In the county, including Joshua Tree, every short-term rental requires proper permitting. There are occupancy rules, property limitations, ownership limitations, and in certain areas, permit availability has become a major consideration, which means it's no longer a market where you buy first and figure things out later. So you should understand permit availability before you close and not after. Here's my take after selling real estate here in the high desert. I think a lot of investors are asking the wrong question. The question isn't, is Airbnb dead? The question is, can I create something guests actually want? Because if your plan is to buy an average house and hope for average results, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you're buying strategically, if you're paying attention to design, if you're solving the permit issue up front, if you're creating an experience, then yes, I absolutely think there are still opportunities here, especially when you compare entry prices to other vacation markets. Most buyers are still looking at home prices that are significantly lower than Palm Springs, Big Bear, coastal California, and many other vacation destination markets. The barrier to entry is relatively reasonable, and the national park is not going anywhere. The dark skies aren't going anywhere. The desert lifestyle isn't going anywhere. and the demand is still here. The game has just changed. So is the high desert still a good market for Airbnb in 2026? I'd say it's no longer an easy market, but it can still be a very good market for the right property and the right buyer. The investors winning today are doing more homework than ever before, and they're building properties that stand out instead of blend in. If you're thinking about buying a short-term rental in Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree, I'd be happy to help you understand permit availability, local regulations, and which areas still make sense. Drop STR in the comments or send me a message. And if you want more videos about what's really happening in the high desert real estate market, make sure you subscribe because I have a lot more videos coming.